Kansas legislature has now completed 4 weeks of the 2011 Kansas legislative session. We're at that point of the session where legislators and other interest groups are scrambling to make sure that they get a bill introduced before the deadline. And the deadline has passed for the introduction of most bills. There are always exceptions, with some committees having that ability to introduce bills later in the session. But the key point is that if a bill has not been introduced by this point, it's highly unlikely that it will be considered during the session. But what that also means is that legislature is now looking at the halfway point where bills must pass one body of the legislature, either the House or Senate, by February 25th. So in the next couple weeks, you'll see the committees taking lots of action and discussion about bills they want to kick out. And then also next week, or at least the week of the 21st of February, they'll be on the floor of the House and Senate most of the week, taking up a long list of bills for debate and action. So many of the bills that we watch, we know have been introduced, but some of them have not been published, and lots going to really happen here in the next 2 or 3 days when we see these new bills cough up. One issue of interest to the livestock sector is the proposal that Governor Brownback announced the very first week of the session, and that is his proposal to merge the Kansas Animal Health Department and the State Conservation Commission into the Kansas Department of Agriculture. This is not a new issue. This proposal has been around in the past, with most interest in those who advocate it as maybe a way of having a savings in state government. The Kansas Livestock Association has historically and repeatedly opposed the merger of the Animal Health Department with the Department of Ag. But when this proposal came out, the governor's administration worked with and had many discussions with stakeholder groups, including and especially Kansas Livestock Association, in an attempt to try to address the concerns that the industries had about merging it. And it looks like most, if not all, those concerns have been addressed in the executive reorganization order that was introduced with just the last few days. That executive reorganization order will designate the Livestock Commissioner as the new Animal Health Commissioner in the Animal Health Division of the Department of Ag. It will continue to have an Animal Health Board that will be advisory, as it has in the past. And that Animal Health Board will also have the power and authority to recommend names to the Secretary of Agriculture when there is a vacancy in that position. So the Animal Health Board will continue to have a very important responsibility, and the new Animal Health Commissioner will continue to have the same legal and statutory authorities as he or she does now in the Kansas statutes. But that will be discussed and reviewed in more detail here in the next few weeks. Again, there's been a lot of bills that have been introduced, but one bill to focus on is an interesting concept, House Bill 2141. This bill basically would say that the wind and solar development rights cannot be severed from the ownership of the surface of the land. So in other words, only the surface owner can own those rights, and if the property would sell, those rights would go with the property and to the new owner. There's a lot of uncertainty about the implications of this. This is kind of the basic tenet of property law, and this will be a situation to be different than oil and gas leases that have gone on through many years since oil and gas development. So this will be reviewed in more detail. It's uncertain whether this legislature will try to move the bill this session. Again, we know of several other bills that are in the pipeline that the Kansas Livestock Association members will be looking at in more detail this week when they come to Topeka for the annual legislative meeting. We will likely see bills dealing with immigration reform. which will be a concern of the Kansas Livestock Association, as it is a federal issue, and what states do or try to do can cause some economic consequences for not only the livestock industry, but business as a whole and the state's economy. We'll see several bills introduced and considered dealing with water rights conservation, primarily groundwater, and those will be the subject of hearings in the next 2 weeks. And numerous proposals and ideas for ways to change our tax structure, be it changing the sales tax law, removing some of the exemptions, proposals to eliminate or phase out the corporate income tax, all of which will be hampered by the financial straits of the state, but could amount to some interesting debates in the last half of the session. So we'll have more detail in future reports for the state legislature, and particularly of interest to the Kansas livestock industry.